He couldn't hit his first note. His throat had locked up. 20,000 people waited in silence. What Jeff did in that moment created one of rock history's most unforgettable moments and forever changed the music world's prejudices about vulnerability. New York, Madison Square Garden, May 15, 1995, Monday night. The clock showed 9:47 p.m. Jeff Buckley stood on the stage of his career's biggest concert. Grace album had been out for 6 months, earning critical acclaim, but commercial success hadn't come yet. Tonight was different. Tonight was the night everything would change, or the night nothing would happen. The moment the stage lights came on, Jeff realized this wasn't just a concert, this was a test. 20,000 pairs of eyes were looking at him. 20,000 people had bought tickets, left their homes, came here with hope to hear his voice. Most didn't know him. They knew he was Tim Buckley's son, but didn't know who Jeff Buckley was. Not yet. Jeff stood next to the microphone. Black shirt, jeans, bare feet, simple as always. But this time something was different. His hands were shaking, almost imperceptibly, but shaking. His breathing was shallow. His heart pounded like a drum in his chest. This wasn't normal stage excitement. This was fear. But the most shocking part hadn't started yet. The crowd was waiting. That massive, dark crowd, the young girl in the front row, smiled at him. The middle-aged man in the back crossed his arms, watching skeptically. The teenage group in the balcony was ready to scream. 20,000 different expectations, 20,000 different hopes, 20,000 different judgments, all on Jeff. Jeff touched his guitar strings. Getting ready to make the sound of morn, he had sung this song hundreds of times. In small clubs, in recording studios, at home to Linda, he knew every breath, could produce every note from memory. But tonight was different. He approached the microphone, opened his mouth, sound should come out. The first word, morning, should emerge, but nothing came out. Nothing. His throat felt locked. He could breathe, but it was as if no air was reaching his vocal cords, as if someone was squeezing his throat. Panic began. Sweat started dripping. 20,000 people were waiting, and Jeff Buckley couldn't make a sound. His second attempt. Nothing again. Just a whisper mixed with air. The microphone picked it up and amplified it. 20,000 people heard Jeff's breathing sound. An uncomfortable silence began. The girl in the front row frowned. "Is there a problem?" she seemed to ask with her eyes. The man in the back crossed his arms tighter. Someone from the balcony shouted, "Come on." Storms were raging inside Jeff. "This can't be. This is impossible. Can't I sing a song I've sung thousands of times? Can't I do something this simple? Dad never experienced anything like this. He was always perfect. What am I? Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail." What was going through Jeff's mind wasn't just the panic he was experiencing in that moment. This was actually fear that had been building for years. The constant fear of comparison that came with growing up in Tim Buckley's shadow. The fear of being told he's not as good as his father. The fear of being told he's only here because of fame. Jeff moved away from the microphone, went to the edge of the stage, sat down. Yes, in front of 20,000 people, he sat down on the stage edge, took his guitar in his lap, closed his eyes. The audience didn't understand what was happening. Was this planned? Part of the show? Such silence fell over Madison Square Garden that you could hear the air conditioning. 20,000 people held their breath, watching Jeff. This would either be a very big art moment or a very big fiasco. That's exactly when everything changed. Jeff opened his eyes. But this time it was a different Jeff. Not fragile, not scared, real, raw, honest. He stood up but didn't go to the microphone. He stood in the middle of the stage and began to speak, without a microphone, just his own voice. "I'm Jeff Buckley, and right now I'm scared." His voice's carrying power was incredible. Using Madison Square Garden's acoustics, he carried his words to the back row. Even people in the balcony could hear. "I'm scared because I'm afraid of disappointing you. I'm scared because I might not meet what's expected of me as my father's son. I'm scared because when you hear my voice, you might think, is that all?" The crowd was mesmerized. No one expected such honesty. No one expected a musician to be this vulnerable. This wasn't a rock concert. This was a confession. This was a therapy session. This was a human moment. But then I thought this. I'm not here to be with you. Not to be for you. I'm here to be for music. Music is bigger than me. Bigger than you. Bigger than all of us. Jeff reached for his guitar, still without a microphone, just the acoustic sound of his guitar and his own voice. This song is called Mourn, but it's actually about hope, and at that moment, it began. The first strings of the guitar, simple, clean, acoustic. The sound spread through the hall magically. Jeff's voice had returned too. Clean, clear, full of emotion. What you're seeing now is nothing. Because as Jeff sang the song, something happened. The audience started standing up, one by one. First the girl in the front row, then the one next to her, then the man in the back, then the one next to him. It spread in waves backward. Within 30 seconds, 20,000 people were standing. But they weren't applauding. They stood in respectful silence. They listened quietly. They absorbed every word, every note of Jeff's into themselves. This wasn't just listening. This was a living moment. Jeff paused in the middle of the song, opened his eyes, made eye contact with 20,000 people, one by one, individually, as if he was singing to each one separately. Love is not a whisper or a weakness. No. Love is not a whisper or a weakness. No. When he sang these words, there was such power in his voice that Madison Square Garden's walls vibrated. But this power didn't come from shouting, it came from reality. From honesty, from transforming his fragility into strength. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. The song ended. After Jeff played the last note, he put down his guitar. Silence. Complete silence. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. No one applauded. No one shouted. No one spoke. Then the girl in the front row started crying, from happiness. Then the one next to her. Then the one behind. Domino effect. Half of the 20,000 people were in tears, the other half in shock. Jeff went to the microphone. This time his voice came out. "Thank you," he said. This was a surprise for me too, and at that moment it exploded. 20,000 people began applauding in unison, standing ovation. But not just applause, shouts, screams, "I love you, Jeff." Voices. The crowd had gone wild. Jeff smiled. A real smile. A smile that didn't hide his fragility, and he continued. "You won't believe it, but the next 90 minutes became one of rock history's best performances. Hallelujah, Last Goodbye, Lover You Should Have Come Over, came one after another. In every song the same honesty, the same reality, the same raw energy." Jeff was no longer afraid, because he had experienced the worst thing, losing his voice, and had overcome it. The crowd had changed too. They were no longer just listening, they were living it. They were with him in Jeff's every note, every word, every pause. This wasn't just a concert, it was a collective spiritual experience. The concert ended. After Jeff said his final "Thank you, New York," he left the stage. But the crowd didn't leave. 20,000 people continued standing and applauding for 15 minutes. They called Jeff back. One more. One more. Jeff came back. This time without his guitar, just himself. "You taught me something tonight," he said. "Trying to be perfect is the enemy of art. Being real is art itself. Tonight I was real with you. And that was enough." The final applause lasted 20 minutes. The next day's New York Times article, Jeff Buckley showed how to transform fragility into strength. Rolling Stone magazine, 1995's best concert. Jeff Buckley became a legend in one night. But the real impact wasn't in the media, it was seen in the people who were in the hall that night. Sarah, one of the audience members that night, still tells the story 25 years later. "When I saw Jeff lose his voice, I first felt disappointed. Then when I saw how he turned the situation around, I learned something about life. I don't have to be perfect. Being real is enough." Marcus, one of the audience members in the balcony that night, "I was 35 and had never cried until that day. And Jeff said, 'I'm scared, something broke inside me. I thought I shouldn't appear weak to be strong. Jeff showed me that was wrong.'" Lisa, the girl in the front row. "That night was when my music career began. After seeing Jeff's courage, I decided to take the stage too. Now I'm a professional musician. I remember that night before every stage performance. 8 minutes. It took 8 minutes from when his voice wouldn't come out to finishing his first song. In 8 minutes, Jeff Buckley didn't just find his voice, he found himself, and he inspired 20,000 people to find themselves too. Why is this story so powerful? Because we all know the fear Jeff experienced. The fear of being inadequate, the fear of failure, the fear of being judged. That night Jeff experienced these fears and transformed them into power. What would you have done in that situation? Would you have run from the stage? Would you have made excuses? Or would you have transformed your fragility into power like Jeff? The biggest lesson Jeff Buckley taught that night was this: trying to be perfect makes you average. Being real makes you legendary. 20,000 people didn't go home that night having just watched a concert. They went home having learned that fragility can be power, and that lesson changed their lives. Do you have moments when you lose your voice? In those moments, do you do what Jeff did? Because sometimes the greatest power comes from accepting your weakness. Jeff Buckley didn't just make music history that night. He gave a lasting lesson about the power of the human spirit, and that lesson still echoes. But the story doesn't end here, because the impact of that night fundamentally changed Jeff's life too. After the concert, Jeff went backstage. His hands were still shaking, but this time not from fear, from adrenaline. Linda met him. There were tears in her eyes. "When I saw you sit on that stage edge, I thought I was going to die," Linda said. "But then when you stood up and started talking, Jeff, you had never looked so strong." Jeff hugged Linda. "I felt that way too. For the first time I felt like myself on stage." There was a knock on the door. Manager Dave Laurie entered. There was a mixture of amazement and excitement on his face. "Jeff, there are over 50 journalists outside. Everyone wants to talk to you. Rolling Stone, MTV, New York Times, they're all here." Jeff hesitated. Media was something he never liked, especially being constantly compared to his father. But tonight was different. "I'll only talk to 3, Jeff said. "But I have a condition. Questions will only be about tonight's performance. Not a single question about my past, about my father." The first journalist was Jennifer from Rolling Stone, experienced music writer. She had been following the rock scene for years, but had never seen anything like this. "Jeff, that moment when you sat on the stage edge, was this planned?" Jeff smiled. "Jennifer, that moment was a surprise for me too. When my voice wouldn't come out, I experienced panic. But then I realized this panic is real, and being real is more powerful than being fake." How did it feel to tell 20,000 people, "I'm scared"? Liberating. When you try to hide your weakness, your energy goes there. But when you accept it, that energy can go to the music. Jennifer was taking notes. This interview would become one of the important interviews in music history. The second journalist was Robert from MTV, younger, asking more aggressive questions. "Jeff, did you prepare beforehand to give such a performance?" "No, Robert. Actually, the opposite. I'd been preparing for years, but for the wrong things. I was trying to be perfect. Tonight, I gave up trying to be perfect." Will we see this approach in your future concerts? Jeff thought. "It won't be the same every night, of course, but I won't stop being honest." The third journalist was Patricia from New York Times, the most experienced one, asking the right questions. "Jeff, you didn't just make music tonight, you conducted a kind of therapy session. Was this conscious?" "Patricia, music is already healing for both the performer and the listener. I realized this tonight. The stage can be like a doctor's office too. Being so open to 20,000 people requires courage." "Or desperation," Jeff said, laughing. "Sometimes desperation can be stronger than courage." The interviews ended. Jeff and Linda returned to the hotel. They sat quietly in their room. "Jeff, something changed tonight." "I can feel it," Linda said. "Me too. Now I'll feel something different when I go on stage." And that's exactly what happened. In his following concerts, Jeff didn't forget that night. He stopped trying to be perfect. He started living each night differently. Sometimes he would stop in the middle of songs and talk to the audience. Sometimes he would sing with a broken voice, but that broken voice would be more emotional than his most beautiful voice. In 1996 at Pink Pop Festival, another incident occurred. Jeff was singing Hallelujah when it started raining. The audience scattered. Normally the concert would stop, but Jeff continued. Under the rain, he continued singing Hallelujah to the 500 people who remained in front of the empty stage. The sound systems had been cut. He only had his guitar and his voice. That night also became a historical memory. Jennifer Williams, one of the 500 people that night, listening to Jeff under the rain was a completely different experience. We experienced that honesty we lived with 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden, this time with 500 people. Jeff's voice mixed with the sound of rain, but every word was heard. Tom Morrison, Pink Pop organizer. I've been organizing festivals for 30 years. I've seen thousands of concerts canceled due to rain, but the only concert where the artist continued singing under the rain for just the remaining 500 people was Jeff's concert. Jeff's approach didn't just change his concerts, it changed his album recordings too. While recording sketches for My Sweetheart the Drunk album, he constantly used trial and error method. He worked for real recording, not perfect recording. Sound engineer Mike Clouth. Jeff tried to bring that Madison Square Garden spirit to the studio too. When we said this is too perfect, he would say, then it's wrong. He would say it needs to be a bit broken, a bit real. But the biggest change was in Jeff's personality. Before Madison Square Garden, he was constantly trying to prove himself, anxious, perfectionist. After that, he became more relaxed, more free, more confident. Old friend Michael Tye. There was a change in Jeff after Madison Square Garden. He no longer constantly asked, am I good? He asked, is this real? This was a much healthier approach. Rebecca Moore, close friend. After that night, Jeff no longer talked about being Tim Buckley's son. He started living just as Jeff Buckley. This was a great liberation. The transformation Jeff experienced that night wasn't just the 8 minutes on stage. Those 8 minutes were the beginning of a process. The process of self-acceptance. The process of learning to be real. The process of getting out of the perfectionism trap. Psychologist Dr. Amanda Ross analyzes this situation. Jeff experienced a classic breakthrough from performance anxiety. When fear took over him, he accepted that fear instead of fighting it. This acceptance freed him. Most artists in that situation run, hide, make excuses. Jeff did the exact opposite. He shared his fear. This was very brave behavior. Another effect of the Madison Square Garden night was on Jeff's fans. After that night, people going to Jeff Buckley concerts weren't just coming to listen to music, they were coming to experience something, to experience a moment of reality. Mark Stevens, regular concert-going fan. After Madison Square Garden, every Jeff concert was different. We never knew what would happen, because Jeff didn't know either. That spontaneity, that honesty reflected on every night. Sarah Kim, music blogger. Going to Jeff's concerts was like going to therapy. He was so honest, so open that you found that courage in yourself too. And of course, that night also had an impact on the music industry. The courage Jeff showed also affected other artists. Tom York, Radiohead. When I heard about Jeff's Madison Square Garden performance, I was very affected. Being so vulnerable on stage, we were inspired by this too. Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam. What Jeff did showed where rock music could go. It's not enough to just be strong, you need to be real. Chris Cornell, I had the chance to be friends with Jeff. When he told me about that Madison Square Garden night, his eyes were shining. You could see the impact that night had on him. But the most tragic part of Jeff's story also begins here, because this newly discovered freedom also put him at risk. He became more spontaneous, more unpredictable. Sometimes this produced beautiful results. Sometimes it created dangerous situations. May 29, 1997, Memphis. Jeff was swimming in Wolf River with his friends, a spontaneous decision. Unplanned, risky. The water was cold, the current was strong, but Jeff had felt more free since that Madison Square Garden night. He was less bound by rules. Keith Foti, who was there that night. Jeff's decision to go into the water was sudden. He said, let's swim, and went in. In normal, Jeff wasn't this spontaneous. After Madison Square Garden, he had become someone who took more risks. And we know that that night Jeff Buckley was lost in the waters of Wolf River. Perhaps the freedom he found at Madison Square Garden both took him to the peak and took him away too early. But this is certain, those 8 minutes changed Jeff's life. And Jeff's short life changed the lives of millions of people. Today, 28 years after that night, there's a plaque for Jeff Buckley at Madison Square Garden. It reads, "History can be written in 8 minutes." And every year on May 15th, hundreds of Jeff Buckley fans gather in front of Madison Square Garden. They sing "Mourn." Not loudly, like Jeff did that night. Heartfelt, real, fragile. This tradition was started by Sarah Wilson, the girl in the front row that night. Every year we remember that night. We remember what Jeff taught us. Being real. Sharing fear instead of hiding it. It's been 28 years since Jeff Buckley's 8 minutes ended, but the impact continues. Every musician who takes the stage, every person who overcomes their fear, every artist who chooses reality is a continuation of Jeff's courage that night. Have you experienced your own Madison Square Garden moment? The moment when you faced fear, shared it instead of hiding it, chose reality instead of perfection. The biggest lesson Jeff Buckley taught us is this: sometimes the greatest victories come from within our greatest fears. 8 minutes is enough. Just 8 minutes is enough to change your life. Are you ready to live your own 8 minutes?